Hello there, and welcome back to the Amtgard Basics Series. Today's video, I'm going to be telling you all about battle gaming terminology. Now, I am Squire Callahan Ridgeborn, almost a Battlemaster, always a wizard, and the reason vocabulary matters is so that you can understand the game and execute your best performance. So the vocabulary that we're going to be going over today are things circling around battle games, how Reeves are going to be explaining them in terms like that. So the very first and most important thing for you to be aware of is game objects. Now, a game object is basically the MacGuffin of your battle game. For those of you who don't know what a MacGuffin is a literary concept. It's an item that is the purpose of the adventure. And the idea behind a MacGuffin is that it doesn't matter what the actual item is, because the actual item doesn't really make a hill of beans difference to the story. An example of a good MacGuffin would be like in The Lord of the Rings, the one ring is a MacGuffin. And the reason for this is it could be the one pasta bowl or the one short sword. It doesn't matter what the magic item is that they're trying to destroy. The item is centric to the story, but not integral to the story. Like if the item was changed to be a magic hat, the story would not fundamentally change. In Amtgard, if you are going to be going after a MacGuffin or a game object, there are a number of rules you need to be aware of. So, number one, game objects always require a free hand to hold. That means your hand cannot be holding a sword, it cannot be holding any piece of equipment, and you cannot cast with that hand. So if you are holding a game object in your hand, say you've got a ball or a stick or a flag, you can't use that same hand to try to cast a spell. Okay? Next, game objects can never be held while you are in a state. If you are frozen or stunned or insubstantial, you must immediately drop that game object. A notable exception here would be the stopped state. That does not always require you to drop the item in question. Now, if you are working with game objects, they are maximum one per player. No matter how big your hands are, no matter how many hands you have, you can only carry one per player, unless the game runner specifically says that you can carry more than one. Sometimes game objects will have additional effects, like they'll give you a negative status effect or a positive status effect based on what they're doing. That is going to depend from game to game. Speaking of additional effects, vulnerable. Vulnerable is a state that often is attached to a game object. If you're holding this flag, you're vulnerable. And vulnerable is a nasty state to be in, because what it says is the next physical thing that touches you kills you. It's an engulfing kill. It doesn't matter if it hits your shield, your sword, your equipment, your foot on ground. If you're vulnerable and something touches you, you're dead. Any strike is a kill. Weapons, spell balls, arrows, all of it. It ignores armor and enchantments and equipment. Vulnerable is sort of a super duper state that you can't get put in by anything except for the game itself. Fragile is a weaker version of vulnerable. When a player is fragile, the next wound dealt to them would kill them. So anything that would wound the player, you're dead, drop the object, go back to respawn. But armor and enchantments still work. So if you are wearing a piece of physical armor and an arrow hits you in the leg, and your armor blocks that arrow, congratulations, you're not dead yet. You have time to run. Zones. Now, zones are an interesting thing that you might see on a field. Now, a zone is usually a named area of a battlefield. Now, this is a circle, a rectangle, could be all sorts of stuff, could be flagged off, could be painted on the ground, could be a tarp. You never know with a zone. But zones are usually defined. Now, they don't always have to be. Now, if you're going to your local park, your respawn point is technically a zone, and it's very rarely ever labeled. They'll say next to that tree or 10 feet behind this. It's not necessarily a bad thing that we're not always marking everything at our local parks. It's a lot easier and faster to just get gaming that way, but that is technically a zone. Now, an anti-magic zone. Now, this would require flags or marking tape or something marking it on the field. An anti-magic zone is an area where there are no enchantments and no spells. Usually, it just removes all magical effects and abilities from a player when they step in. And these are really popular on things like Kingdom Fields. At an event fairly recently, we had a bunch of anti-magic fields spread out, and Sir Big Head was hanging out in the anti-magic zones trying to 1v1 anyone foolish enough to go in there with him. Could see, I've never actually seen this, but an empowered zone. An empowered zone is a area of a field that gives a caster or anyone with an ability a special buff. Examples of empowered zones that I've heard of are extension zones. It's an area that while you're inside, you can cast with extension as if it was on your spell list for free, and if you already had extension, it doesn't use up the extension. Another example of an empowered zone would be a small area of a battlefield where everyone inside it is affected as per Song of Power. So, it'd be pretty nice to have a little area where I could go and have half my charge just knocked off for me. So, empowerment zone, I'd like to see more of those. I think that'd be kind of cool. Terrain. Terrain is a simulated or real field condition that helps fulfill fantasy tropes, right? This could mean that your local park has a lot of trees in it. It could mean that you are using inflatable terrain like we have in the Rising Winds. It could mean that there's a physical bridge that you're fighting over. There's all sorts of interesting physical terrain and imaginary terrain that you're able to use. Some of the more common terrain features that you're going to see are going to be like water features. You might have a lake or a river, and depending on your game runner, those are going to have different effects. Could be that if you're wounded in the water, then you drown. It could be that you have to travel heel to toe, but if you're wounded, you're fine. There are pits. Pits are a popular thing because it's fun to try to maneuver people into falling down into the pit. You get that Sparta moment. Rocks are always, a constant, right? We have our Rising Winds terrain. I like to imagine that they're just a bunch of rocks that are piled up around in like a Stonehenge kind of deal, and that could be pretty cool. And then, of course, bridges are, of course, the classic terrain for a battle. And you define the start of the bridge and the end of the bridge, and you say that if you go off this side of the bridge, you've fallen down. There's a lot you can do with bridges. So, a node. A node is a set location on a battlefield that is worth points. So, in the Rising Winds and our Kingdom Battle Gaming kit, we have PVC nodes that are a stick. They're sort of a T-shape, and there's a sliding piece. And one side's blue, the other side's red. They start in the middle, and you can score by slapping the node over to the other side and starting to score. You can have a lot of nodes on a field. You might only have one node on the field. Sometimes nodes will have flags or timers attached to them. All a node is a specific location on the battlefield that is tied to scoring victory points. Death count or respawn is how long it takes for you to come alive again after you die. So in battle games, you are going to die a lot, right? Death is part of the game, and you're going to need to know how long it takes for you to come back. Now, there are a lot of different things that you'll see. There's some lingo attached to this. You'll see full and half count. Full count is always 60 seconds. Half count is always 30 seconds. If it's going to be a different amount of time, then they won't say full or half. They'll specify the actual time. Now, your death count doesn't always start when you die. Now, if it's a full count at death, that means the second you die, start your clock, because 60 seconds from now you can come alive again at your base. But if they say it's like a half count at base, that means you have to physically return to your spawn point and be there for 30 seconds before you can respawn. Lives are used in shatter battles and sometimes for certain scoring objectives. The way that lives work is each player has a set number of lives, and when they have died that many times, they're done. And that's a life, right? Counting is a special type of counting. Think back when you were in elementary school and they wanted you to count 10 seconds, and they told you, count Mississippis, 1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi. Well, we also do special counts in Amtgard. There is usually one of three things that you'll see in battle games, but sometimes they want you to say something special. Looting is when you are trying to take a resource off the ground or from another player. It's usually looting 1, looting 2, looting 3, and you're stealing loot. You're rifling through their pockets looking for the item. Unlocking is when you have a building or a door or something. You're simulating lockpicking at that point. And then, of course, capturing is just you're counting a certain amount of time before you can switch the node from their team's flag to your team's flag. And you're demonstrating that you have control of the node because you're able to count and have a free hand on the node without an enemy player interfering with you. So, That was some battle game terminology. I hope it helps you get out there and have fun, get some good whacks in. If you've enjoyed this video, please join me in the next one where we're going to be going over spellcasting basics. I look forward to seeing you there. Thanks for watching.